complexity of actually then how this is administered. On the other hand, we know that there's a lot of public support to health taxes if that is accompanied with a broader campaign on explaining why one would actually increase those taxes and for what that additional money would be used. So we have a sort of discrepancy here. In addition, what we know is also once this is targeted for, let's say, health promotion or an institution for health promotion, one needs to also ensure that should a government change, like in Pia's example, and they would withdraw those taxes, what then would happen to those institutions that have been supported with those additional taxes? So it is a bit more complex, and one needs to find a balance for this. But in general terms, I think it's really important for us to also recognize that the public understands very well why certain taxes have to be increased. They do understand also the policies of subsidies, and you can imagine that sometimes when there's unhealthy subsidies, there's also a lot of discouragement from the public for those subsidies at the same time. So I think we have the public on our side if we do it well, right? So therefore, let's find a good balance between earmarking and letting this go into the general households.
Very good. Any other comments? Go ahead.
I just would like to add, reiterating what Rudiger is saying, really this is important for people to accept the taxes. I mean, many countries there's a big debates about taxes yes, taxes not, but this earmarking of course helps. And we have some very good examples for this. We have the example in Hungary where they taxed foods, and the revenue is used to increase the salary of healthcare workers, which is another sore point. UK is being used for school breakfast club. Mexico to bring water in water fountains in schools, although I'm not sure how that's been implemented. But Barbados to support other health initiatives. So I mean, it's actually a wonderful win-win. And I know that the finance people are not super happy about that for the reason that Rudiger explained. But some of the health foundations, like the Thai Health Foundation, for example, have actually been able to produce a lot of good leadership because of that revenue. Where's the money if we want to implement public health policies? So this is a important source. Thanks.
I want to talk a little bit about sort of the lessons learned in both the Philippines and Colombia. You shared, Senator and Andrea, a little bit about that. But if you were to give advice to other countries that are looking to implement taxes on tobacco, on ultra-processed products, what would you highlight as a key lesson and something for advocates, policymakers, leaders to take into account?
Well, let me ask a question. Is there anyone here who is a parliamentarian or works for a parliamentarian? So that's my first advice. So as you know, I am a member of parliament, and the work I've done is through parliament. And if we're talking about taxation, you need a parliamentarian to do that. Of course, I could never have done it alone. As I said, the Department of Finance worked very closely with me because their goal is to raise taxes. But in my case, because I had come from a background of 10 years as a Committee of Health chairman, so my inclination, my heart is really for what I can do to make the health system in my country better. So I think I was in a really good position to merge the two. Like I kept pushing for higher tax. I actually pushed for taxes higher than the Department of Finance was pushing for. So they were like, oh, sure, go ahead. But yeah, and as was mentioned, I am a member of UNITE, the chapter chair of Asia Pacific. And we're a network of parliamentarians all over the world for global health. And so this is exactly the work that I'm trying to espouse outside of my country, because it has not been easy. It is not easy, and it will not get any easier. It may get a little bit easier because the question earlier was like, how do you justify the earmarking? And when people know, and I have adult daughters, when they were in college and they now just graduated from college, they would say, good job, great. It's so nice to know that these public hospitals are now available. But you need that kind of feedback to do the work that we do, and we need better communication so people understand that this person pushing for tax has a bigger picture in mind. So working with the parliamentarians, the whole network of supporters, it is really important.
So parliamentarians, critical. Andrea, can you talk a little bit about civil society and lessons learned that you can share with other countries, with other colleagues in other countries?
Bueno, yo creo que para nosotros ha sido fundamental, como lo expresaba, el trabajo en coaliciones, el trabajo en alianza como organizaciones que tenemos un objetivo común. Eso ha sido fundamental.
I think that something key has been to work with organizations or alliances who share the same goals as us.
Lo segundo es también rodearnos de la academia, pero de una academia libre de conflictos de interés que sea la base de nuestras discusiones con los tomadores de decisión, que sea la...
Secondly, I think it's very important to work with the academic sector, but with an academic sector that is free from conflicts of interest and who can be the basis for our research and discussions with policymakers.
También sentimos que es necesario lograr la movilización social. Es necesario que las comunidades en los territorios se apropien de estas medidas para que sean ellas mismas las que las defiendan.
We also think that social mobilization is very important because it's the communities and society that have to make these topics their topics, and they are the ones who need to promote this as well.
Y dos cosas finales. Por último, que es muy importante para nosotros, o lo ha sido, lograr contrarrestar la interferencia de la industria y la captura corporativa. O sea, nosotros como organizaciones de la sociedad civil hemos tenido una batalla frontal contra las industrias de comestibles y bebibles ultraprocesados porque ellas han sido las que finalmente han incidido en la agenda de política pública y no han permitido que las medidas de salud pública que defendemos pues sean aprobadas.
And production in our countries of foods which are real, which are not processed.
Garantizando la soberanía alimentaria de nuestros países.
And we also need to guarantee food sovereignty in our countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I want to pick up on that because you talked about increasing access to healthier foods. And so I want to turn to Dr. Crack in terms of the role of other non-tax fiscal policies to promote health and to change consumer and market behavior. So if you can comment on that, and we'll open it up for questions afterwards.
Yeah. So in the financial sector, we want to design societies, right? So, and to make health an explicit goal is absolutely possible, right? So, as I said before, we have actually three instruments for this. We have taxes, we have subsidies, and we have investments, right? So the question is, so taxes is, of course, how you get money in, right? Then when we talk about health taxes, and as Francesco said, in some countries, they are then used, let's say, for school meals. That is subsidies. Or they could be used for subsidizing vegetables and fruit. We have food deserts in Europe, in Germany, where I come from, in some parts of the new Länder, you don't get easily fresh vegetables and fruit. And that, the reason for that, of course, is the market. So if you would subsidize those, make them more accessible for people and affordable, then, of course, you know, the big retailers would perhaps, you know, make them more, would make this more part of their product chain. So we could invest in green spaces so that people can actually be more physically active. That's investments. So all of this is dynamic. And that's why I said, you know, when we talked about earmarking, this rigidity of having to allocate certain funding to certain areas, very much in the ministries of finance, you don't really like that too much. But the other thing is, if you have a value system of saying, we make health a priority goal for us, what we're at the moment hearing also from the Council of the Economics of Health for All, to have well-being societies, and you do this through well-being economies. So the, you know, design potential that we have with those three instruments is not negligible. We can do it. We know the what, and we also know the how to, what you can do and how you can actually implement that to have healthier societies.
Francesco, do you want to?
Yeah, I want to add something. No, I mean, just want to clarify, first of all, that our guidelines are actually going to be published at the end of summer. So if you're looking them on the website now, they're not there. End of summer, being edited.
The guidelines for?
The guidelines for taxation and subsidies. So that's my first thing. We specifically looked at the subsidies with the primary intention to change consumer behavior. So the vouchers, the discounts, changes in the value-added tax. So that's the kind of analysis we've done. There's another important one, which is a big elephant in this room, and that's actually agricultural subsidies. That's enormous. That's actually one of the largest investments that public sectors do. We haven't done that, so maybe it's worth another analysis, but last year, State of Food Security and Nutrition report that we normally publish every year together with FAO and WFP, UNICEF and others, there is an analysis of that, so look at that. And clearly, the repurposing of fiscal subsidies is going to be a major changer in the affordability of healthy diet. At the moment, it's really targeted to the wrong commodities. Mm-hmm. So that's something to be discussed. Yeah.
All right. So really simple issue, right? Taxation, you know, industry opposition, political will. Let's open it up for discussion. I see a question over here. I think we have a mic. Ooh, lots of questions on this side of the room. That's the side that's been paying attention, I guess.
So thank you so much for the discussion on NCDs. My name is Yazan. I'm from Palestine, and I'm here representing the International Federation of Medical Students Associations. So it's actually a very new discussion for me to discuss the different policy taxes. But the question that comes to my head is, how do you think like those policies are following up on collecting those taxes? Do you think those taxes allocation should go further to the health systems in order to support the budgets of tackling the NCDs, since we know like the national budgets, they suffer a lot from the prices of drugs, prices of services to deal with NCDs? Or is it usually just allocated to the national budget and it might be serving other logistical aspect of the government? Thank you so much.
Yeah, great question. Just hang on to the mic. Who wants to tackle that? It's related to earmarking, but who gets to decide where the money goes, right?
Yeah, of course.
Senator, go ahead.
No, please.
Well, in general, governments don't like earmarking, I think, at least in our government. But this was something that, it was the least debated. It was acceptable that this be earmarked precisely for health. I mean, it was clear that we had a lot of work to do for health, and so this was not an issue, at least by the time I came into the picture, maybe decades ago. But what I'd like to share, though, is this. After the 2012 sin tax law that we passed, for the next 5-7 years, every budget season, I was looking for the collection. I was like, where is it? It is earmarked, where is it? And so in the next budget season, for the next 2, I had to put a provision there or actually, no, sorry, I think we already had it there. Anyway, I had to make an amendment somewhere, I can't remember where, to ensure that this was on top of the regular budget for health. Because what happened was, they agreed to earmark, then they took out the budget of health and then just put that in.
Right,
So I had to keep watching it to make
Yeah.
sure that it is on top of.
right. It's
Yeah.
additive. Very good. Let's take questions in two. So I think there's a couple more over here. And then, of course, you can come back to the, I know there's a lot more to be said on that subject, so you can come back to that, certainly.
Hi, Jordan Shannon from United Health Futures. Firstly, just to start by saying profound gratitude and appreciation for all the work that you're doing, particularly Senator Tildar and Andrea. Gracias profundamente. So we're working with the UN Interagency Task Force on the prevention and controls of NCDs to develop a web portal for health taxes and some documents that focus on the political economy. But when you think about health adding products and industries, perhaps another elephant in the room is that of fossil fuels. So I wanted to ask the panelists if they have any lessons learned from their specific health taxes, tobacco, alcohol, SSBs, for example, lessons learned that you think could be useful for fossil fuel advocacy, and any opportunities that they see for expanding to include fossil fuels under the health tax banner. Yeah,
Excellent
thanks.
question. We'll take another one while you ponder that. Over here at the end. Yes, go ahead. No? Oh, gentlemen. Yes.
Thank you so much for the wonderful discussion. My name is Mohammed Suleiman. I'm a medical student from South Africa and here on behalf of the IFMSA. And I wanted to ask, how do we reduce the sale of tobacco? And I'm thinking of an idea that, do you support where if we limit the sale of tobacco to the public, for example, if we can develop a system where a pack of cigarettes, for example, can only be sold to one person, but it's one pack per week. How do you think we can implement a strategy where per person we reduce the sale of tobacco? Thank you so much.
Interesting. All right. Who wants to take the fossil fuel question and this last question? Take them both?
Well, I can start. Now, indeed, what you see is that the subsidies at the moment are not following the overall value for health. Right? So as Francesca also said, the subsidies in agriculture are not geared towards better health at the moment as well. So how do we actually bring health into the picture? That's the first thing. So to make that an explicit goal for these financial instruments that are decided within the ministries of health, or ministries of finance, and in governments overall. So when we're looking at fossil fuels and the subsidies for it, there's of course lobbies behind that. It's what we're seeing in the environmental movement at the moment is to to attack that, to say, well, we cannot afford going further with that because it's against the 1.5 degree call or the 2 degrees call. So there is, of course, advocacy to be done, right? And without that political advocacy, the political will, then of course the lobbies which are behind the the fossil fuel industries, of course, will still try to lobby for their subsidies. But we need to get this out of the way because I think it's become clear with the climate crisis that we're in, and the health crisis that we're in, and the multiple other crises we're in, that we need healthier societies overall. So it remains a sort of political question. Very quickly to the question from the IFMSA. We're talking about tobacco regulation. So the points of sale, the age of sale, the hours of sale, it will be very difficult to identify, to sell one pack per person, because you will see that this will be undermined. I mean, I can clearly see you're sending a friend and, you know, who's not smoking and still buying it. So the sort of implementation of such a regulation would be extremely difficult. We're much more looking at, you know, that, you know, you're regulating in terms of points of sale, that you cannot advertise for it, and age limitations of that kind. So that these have proven to be effective legal regulations for those sales.
Great. I see a question in the back, and just a quick comment on the fossil fuel industries. I think WHO has done a great job of trying to advance this idea of commercial determinants of health and talking about the concept of health-harming industries, and to the extent that there can be greater alliances between tobacco, food, alcohol, and those working on climate, I think that would be very powerful. There's a question over here. I don't know who has the mic, the lady over here. No, sorry, she was in the back, and then this gentleman, so we can take as a duo.
Hi, and thanks so much for the panel. I had really a resource that people can use who are fighting for tobacco, alcohol, sugary sweetened beverage taxes. I'm from WHO in our external relations division, and we just did the largest ever Gallup poll with partners at Bloomberg Philanthropies. And one of the things that it highlighted was that actually the majority of people across major countries in every continent in the world supported taxes for these items. And majority, I mean over 50%. Alcohol is one of the lower ones, but still majority when you look at it. So that's online, and we had a press release on that and some information. But people do support these, and politicians, that helps them move things, that helps our advocacy work. So thank you so much for this panel highlighting some of the effective tools as well. This is fantastic. Cheers.
Thank you. That's a great resource. The gentleman over here.
Thank you. Not often that I'm called gentleman, but thanks. This is a great discussion.
We'll call you doctor next time.
My name is Mike of Movendi International. This is really inspiring. I have lots of material to tweet later on. And I have an advocacy question. In Movendi International, we work with alcohol taxation. These alignments are fantastic. And for us, the big question is, how can we, and what are you doing, or how do you see this, mainstreaming pro-health taxes into other policy areas, especially sustainable development, but also I think the universal health, the UHC high-level meeting is coming up, and we always feel health taxes need to be there more strongly. So from the advocacy dimension, what can we do more and better to mainstream health taxes into other areas? Thanks.
Can I give a quick response
Please.
to that? Because I'm happy that you mentioned sustainable development, because in the 2020 syntax, we changed a little bit the allocation for the tax revenues, and we said 60% will go to universal health care, 20% for health facilities, so these are the hospitals, the healthcare centers, and 20% to sustainable development goals. And I actually made a note to my staff that I need an update because this is a very new law. I need an update to see where it's going. But I feel very strongly that if it is communicated well, and sadly, communication means people seeing building structures, and sometimes it's not really buildings and structures, but feeding programs, you know. I mean, they'll see the kids are eating, the kids are getting healthier, so they can still see it. It's still tangible for them. If it's communicated well, I think people will be able to accept this, and we can broaden the interventions that we're making through the collection of the sin taxes revenue.
Go ahead. Do you want to make a comment, Francesco?
Yeah, I actually wanted to comment, Lucy, on something you said about the commercial determinants. And, you know, it's true, again, that's another big elephant. There are lobbies, very powerful lobbies that interfere with policymaking. Even sometimes the same people who would like to sit at the same table and discuss about an engagement, a positive engagement. So how do we handle that? Many countries are asking us for help. So we need to have clarity about the rules of engagement and the assessment of the risk and the protection of the, over the conflict of interest in this engagement. We also need to have good accountability systems, monitoring systems for those actors in society. Of course, they are actors in society. One thing we did was to try and see what kind of arguments are used, for example, in the debate about taxation of sugar-sweetened beverages. And, you know, you see kind of arguments, you know, it's going to affect employment. Or, well, it's a regressive tax, and it's going to affect the poor. And I think, you know, we have question and answer. Our two departments have published a very interesting manual on how to actually establish taxation of sugar-sweetened beverages. So I think, you know, one aspect is to protect from this influence, but the other aspect is just, you know, provide the policymakers all the tools to actually be able to design those policies and respond in the public fora to those you know, accusations. And, you know, just I quoted the example of the UK sugar levy. And, you know, the fact that you have much greater effect in the lower income group is exactly the demonstration that, you know, it's a regressive tax, so it's going to affect the poor more. No, it's actually going to benefit the poor more. So I think.
Yeah. No, thank you, and thank you for highlighting again the problem of conflict of interest, which Andrea talked about, and the importance of actually working with academic institutions free from conflict of interest that can generate the type of evidence that you just spoke about to help shape policies. And I found your point about equipping governments with arguments to use to counteract the industry arguments. I know there are many of you in this room, I'm looking at Paula Johns, who know a thing or two about effective arguments against industry. Any last final questions before we wrap up the panel? No? Oh, go ahead, please. One more. You get the last word. The mic is coming.
Thank you so much for a great panel. I'm Anna Gilmore from the University of Bath. One thing I'm really interested in is how all these issues link up. So, you know, food, tobacco, alcohol, fossil fuels. And you've all talked about the massive industry lobby. And a key part of that lobby actually has been the way that corporations have influenced science. And they've used that both to delay regulatory action, but also, you know, in the sort of what I would call the acute policy window, to confuse us about, you know, they use their sort of misleading science to confuse us about the impact of those policies. So I'm interested in how we re-look at science as a kind of structural problem here. And the data in OECD shows that corporate funding of science is going up, but public funding of science is stagnating. So these issues are going to get worse. So, and I think you touched on the Thai Health Promotion Foundation, for example, where there has been tax used to support advocacy and research. So I'm interested in your thoughts about using tax to fund science in the public interest.
You see a lot of nodding heads, so that's one response there. Go ahead.
Oh, fantastic. So first of all, Anna, you're absolutely right. Especially the tobacco industry uses science. We know they are paying scientists to actually do studies, and we need to, of course, make that transparent. We've done so when you may remember that at the start of the COVID pandemic, there were papers around that you know, smoking would actually prevent you from COVID. That came from professors. Of course, they were paid by the tobacco industry, and we need to name and shame. We need to do this together with you, but we need to be much, much more on that. Now, the trends, Anna, that you described, they're worrying. And this is in general like this, but especially when we're now also looking at the transformation in artificial intelligence. What will be done and what will be available as scientific evidence might actually rapidly change. So we need to be astute in there. We need to also regulate this more. So we have that on the radar. And of course, your suggestion to actually support public science, you cannot have more supporters than us here on that side of the table.
Well, I think that's a fantastic note to end on. Please join me in giving a big round of applause to this remarkable panel. I was just handed a note that we can play a closeout video, which I think features perhaps some of the story, the Philippine story. I do want to thank the World Health Organization for partnering with us on this event, and thank all of you for coming, for your questions, for your attention. We'd love to continue the conversation, so we'll be, hopefully can stay for a few extra minutes if you have other questions or comments. And so thank you again, and we will, I guess, roll the tape, and you can feel free to stay and watch it, or if you have another meeting or event to attend to, by all means. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy.
That's great. So you can roll the tape.